I had the worst weekend. I'll go into it tomorrow. We're going to do a live at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'll go into it, but it was really, really bad weekend. The one good thing that happened is I'm going back to LA right now, so I stopped in Santa Barbara, and I got a few packages, from supporter who sent me a bunch of equipment to help get my production value going, headphones, camera, microphone, just a whole bunch of stuff that's going to really allow me to step it up a notch, and I am eternally grateful. Thank you so much, man. And I'll learn how to use the camera. It's just too late to do it right now, but I will learn. Last time that I did a post, I said that the next 20 people that send me a GoFundMe send you a signed CD. I was saying originally mid-November, but I'm actually going to be recording it next weekend, so it might be a lot sooner than that. So the people that I'm about to read on this list, I'm going to be sending you a signed CD, and anyone that had sent me a GoFundMe before that, like the first people that really had my back, and I'm very appreciative. So this list is in no particular order. My handwriting sucks, my pronunciation sucks, and I think I put certain people's names on twice for no particular reason. So here we go. Marcus Bagados, Will B, Samantha Annett, Dale Messinio, Tim Selby, Brian Gardiner, Christopher Sawyer, Erlis Lopez, Patrick Rogers. I do not think it says Rogers, but it was the only thing that I thought made sense to say. Zach Sims, J.D. King, Ravana Ash, Mike Taylor, Kevin Kosak, Ricky Davis, Neil Darren, Kevin Gallion, Brandon Cahale, Ali W., Ryan Kuth, Salvador Castaneda, yes, Castaneda sounds better, Ann Ressiner, Kevin Kozak, see, Kevin, I said you twice, and Robin Ash again. So some of you guys got mentioned twice. I don't know. I just wrote it's been a bad weekend. But thank you for the equipment. Thank you guys for the contributions. This week I'm gonna step it up now that I can. So let's get into the story. This is, I don't even know which federal prison, like where we are. I did a live feed, so it kind of got out of chronological order a little bit, or at least I forgot where we were. So I'm just going to say, catching the chain to Victorville. I had gone to the hole for taking responsibility for the shank, even though it wasn't mine, but it was gonna fuck my celly over. So I decided to take responsibility for it, and that upped my points a lot. So when I had gotten out of the hole, usually it takes, in federal prison, it takes about 2 weeks to 2 months to catch the chain. And catch the chain's like, the adage for taking the bus to prison. So if you hear somebody say, I'm about to catch the chain, that means going either upstate or getting transferred to a federal pen. And so I had been sentenced, and I was waiting to go. I didn't know where I was going to go, and they're not supposed to tell you. I forget what it's called. I just got out of state. I forget what they call it. It's not designated. In the federal prison, it's designated, endorsed in the state. But in federal, it's called being designated. So there's a place in Grand Prairie, Texas, that sole responsibility is designating federal inmates. A lot of factors goes into that. They classify you based on how violent they think you are. So in the federal system, people always talk about numbers, like in the state system, like level 1 yards, level 2 yards, level 3 yards, level 4 yards. In the federal system, the lowest you can get is a federal camp. And that's like where stockbrokers go, and like people are like knitting beanies, and it's like every moment of it looks like a postcard. Club fed, the proverbial club fed. People have been saying that for years. So a lot of times there's a misconception. They think that federal prison is like super plush, and there are places like that. I've heard ridiculous things that I think are not true, but I heard that like some of these federal camps used to be co-ed back in like the 70s, and I know some have like golf courses. There's still one somewhere that has a swimming pool, and they're just wide open. Like I had a cellie one time that had been at a camp, and he was telling me that his job was to like drive a truck, and he could leave the prison whenever he wanted to go like pick up cigarettes for his boss, that worked at the camp, and he said that there was also like a street where all this was at USP Lompoc. Lompoc is about an hour north of Santa Barbara, and that was one of the first penitentiaries. That was after Alcatraz had closed down. It's really, really old pen, and it has a movie theater inside. I loved Lompoc. I was only there for a few months on a violation, but I really liked that place. They have cable weights there, and they have a movie theater inside. Like, they show movies all day. You can like bring popcorn. You can buy like big bags of popcorn on the commissary, and like you can bring cold sodas from your cell. And you just go there. We'd get stoned at like 11 a.m. and go watch like the new Star Wars movie. It was pretty cool. It's like an actual movie theater. It kind of looks like an auditorium, but I mean, you know, for all intents and purposes, it's a movie theater. And that was like pretty nice for a USP. It was an old USP. But anyway, so it starts off at a camp, club fed. Then it goes to a low. Low security is, you know, generally a lot of sex offenders are in lows. Sex offenders, like the guy from Subway that got caught with kitty porn, he was at a low. For some reason, they put sex offenders at these lows, and like nothing really goes down at them. The security's lax. They don't have controlled movement in lows. So like when you get to a medium and when you get up to a USP, they have controlled movements. Like they'll say 1 o'clock move, and you have to leave from your housing unit to go to the yard or to go to the education building, but you can only go one way. So they'll say like a one-way move to education. They'll say it on the PA, and then like 15 minutes later, after everyone went in that direction, they'll be like, okay, one-way move from the yard back to the housing unit, and then they'll come from another direction, which makes things really complicated because there's like different units, and if you're trying to score drugs from another unit, sometimes like the people will only take stamps, and like certain people sell stamps because they want money on their books or they want commissary for the stamps. Sometimes people don't have the stamps you need in the unit, so you have to go out like on the walkway, meet somebody for the stamps, and then you have to hope that like you can catch the movements in the right way to get the drugs and take it back to your unit. It is a nightmare when you're strung out, and I was strung out for about 99.9% of my stay at Victorville. So anyway, on a low, there's not those controlled movements. They just kind of leave. It's like a dormitory. It's also not two-man cells in a low. It's a dormitory generally, like military-style barracks, and they'll just like leave the door open, and you can just like walk out to the yard. I just paroled from a level 1 state yard, Centinela State Prison, and it was like they left the door open to the yard all day. We could just like walk in and out whenever we wanted. It was barracks. It was like the most lax prison I've ever been at. And so there's the camp, the low, and then you get up to the FCI level. FCI is a medium, and generally people are at mediums because of their age. If you're like under 25, the feds think you have a propensity towards violence, so they generally have young or violent people. If you have violence on your record, you can't go to a low sometimes. You definitely can't go to a camp. Nobody with violence on their record can go to a camp, and the age really like brings your points up. So it's usually youngsters. There's some lifers at mediums. They're called FCIs. But it's like not the worst of the worst. But it's pretty, I mean, violent inmates are at mediums. And then there's a USP. And a USP is like the top maximum high-level security. Like it's where like all the worst inmates go. Like more than half the yards doing life sentences. That's a USP. Mediums are pretty bad though too. Mediums can get violent. And there's certain mediums that are on the same complex as a USP. Florence, Colorado is one of those. Terre Haute, Indiana is one of those. Victorville is one of those. And so there's be a USP where there's always like top dog people like Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia. They're at those kind of places. And then in the same complex, so the same area outside, there's the mediums. And usually the politics from the USP trickles down to the mediums. So mediums that are on complexes of the pens tend to be pretty violent because they're adhering to the politics that are getting, dictated from that prison. So you don't want to go to an FCI that has a USP there. Pollock has that, Florence, Victorville. I'm sure there's other ones that I can't think of right now. But those FCIs are always rocking and rolling. They're always violent. So My attorney had told me, you're going to a low, because I was like, oh my God, like, is it what they say in the movies? Am I going to go and get raped when I go there? Like, I really don't want to get raped. And, you know, my attorney's like, you're not going to get raped. You're going to go and you're going to be playing miniature golf with stockbrokers. You're going to be drinking martinis that people smuggle in. You're good. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, first of all, I don't think I would have made a low, because they also take your offense level, and conspiracy to distribute heroin is considered like a pretty high offense. In my age, I was like 23. I was 24 at this point, so I knew I don't think I was going to go to camp or a low. The more that I found out about it, I thought that I definitely wouldn't make it to a low. So I was thinking a medium or a USP. Now, I didn't want to go to a USP. We heard really bad stories. We heard this story while we were there that happened at USP Atwater when I was at MDC. When I was at MDCLA, somebody had told me about it, and I guess an islander, like somebody from Samoa or something like that, got really wasted, and one of the COs disrespected him, so he took his knife out, he stabbed the guy like hundreds of times, killed him, and he dragged his dead corpse all the way across the unit with like a snail trail of blood, and just left his listless body in front of the door for like the CO station. They like usually have like a little room with a desk, and just left him there for dead. Like, there's camera footage of it. So we would hear that stuff like this was going on, or that like at Victorville, there was like some rat that worked for, all prisons have like a little detective body within them of the COs. In state prison in California, it's called the Goon Squad, and like they're the ones that do all the investigations, figure out who's bringing drugs in, they investigate homicides, riots, stabbings, assaults, rapes. No, I don't know. No rapes while I was in prison. 0 for 0. But in federal prison, it's called SIS. And I guess a year before I got to Victorville, we heard this story that there was this guy, and he was like an informant for SIS, which is like this investigative body of the COs. And he worked for them for years, and they would give him tobacco, they would give him stamps, porn, commodities that he could trade, and he was a heroin addict, so they sustained his habit. And I guess they had a falling out, him and SIS, so SIS put him out there. They like put him on blast. Like they went to like the ABs, and they're like, hey, this dude is snitching, and he has been for years. And they cut his head off somehow. I think they made some sort of serrated piece. It's the only way I could think that this could happen. Whatever the case, as the story goes, they took his head off and they rolled it down the tier. And that was like to be an example for any of these jailhouse informants. So all of these bad reputations were circulating around MDCLA about, Florence, Colorado was rocking at the time. Bloody Beaumont in Texas was bad. In Victorville, they called Victimville. And I knew where I didn't want to go was the high, the USP. And I didn't want to go to the medium either. I was like really scared to go to Victorville from all the stories that I'd heard about it. And they're not supposed to tell you where you're designated. So it's like a security reason, because there's such like big boys. Like El Chapo's in the feds right now. I mean, Big Meech, I was with him at Lompoc in 2016. Like, he was 2 cells away from me. He gave me a thing of Nike Cortezes, brand new when I got there. Super nice guy. But these are powerful people with a lot of influence, so they don't tell you where you're going to be designated to. And once in a while, you'll have a case manager or counselor that's cool, because they can just look it up in the computer, and they can figure out if you've been designated. And so I had a cool counselor at the time, and I'd go in there every day, and I'd say, hey, am I designated? And she'd say, no. And Boots is like, you're going to go to Victorville and you're going to get smashed out. He's just like, he's making fun of me about it, telling me that I'm going to have to bring all these syringes up my ass, like as an offering for like the wood pile when I get there. And he's always like making fun of me, telling me I'm going to Victorville. One day I go to the counselor's office and she says, you're not designated, but they classified your points. I'm like, okay, what am I? And she said, you're a high. So what does that mean? She's like, you're going to a USP, which is like the top maximum security horrible place where the guy's head rolled off the tier, and I already knew about the head rolling off the tier, and I was like, oh my God, that's probably going to happen to me, considering how I function and pulling suicide watch moves and just like being totally green and doing all this unsolid stuff, like unintentionally. So I told Boots, I'm like, bro, they're gonna send me to a USP. He's like, dude, it's not what you think. Like, you're gonna get there and it's like a party atmosphere. Everyone's shooting dope. You have money. It's not a big deal. You're gonna have fun. I'm just like, I'm tripping, right? He's like, and they probably won't send you to Victorville. Like, Victorville was like the worst at that moment. Like, a few days later, I go and she goes, you're designated. I go, where am I going? Don't tell me Victorville. And she's like, I'm like, oh my God. I remember I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I won't last 4 days in this place. I will die within my first week. And my dad's just like, what do you want me to do? You want me to call and complain? Like, you're in prison. There's nothing. You're fucked. And I'm like, oh my God. So, Boots, like, at that point took on like more of like an older brotherly role, and he started schooling me on politics. And like, he's like, listen, when you get there, you got to have clean paperwork. It shows that you didn't snitch on your case, that you're not a sex offender. And you're not allowed to have it. So I had a copy of my PSR. I had my paid attorney bring me one. And, other people can get that too. You can also have a docket sheet. And Boot showed me how to, like, shuffle it in my legal paperwork. So I had, like, that much paperwork, and we shuffled it page by page because it's, like, numbered. But so it's just camouflaged with all this other paper, and you're allowed to, I think... See, now that I've done state time and I did so much fed time, I get like the terminology mixed up. But I think it's called transpacking, when you like transfer to another prison with your personal property. So I knew how to get the paperwork in, and he told me about putting in work. I'm like, well, how does that work? Like, when I get to prison, am I a punk and a bitch if I don't like stab somebody right when I get there? Should I take off on like the biggest guy like they do in the movies? He's like, definitely don't do that. Do not take off on anyone when you get there. Sit back, don't talk, observe. I've always heard that from OG convicts, and I've done so much time now. It's definitely the way you should be. If you're going to do a prison term, when you hit a new yard, sit back and just watch and see what's going on. And after I was designated, we knew that it was like on a Thursday that like you caught the chain for that particular prison. Some, like on a Tuesday, they might bring you up to Lompoc and to Outwater and to places like that. And then Thursday was for Victorville or whatever day it was. It's so long ago. It was in 2009. So I knew I was going, and he told me about putting in the work. And he said, look, when you go there, find out who's got the keys for your unit and introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm Ryan. I'm from Santa Barbara. I have clean paperwork. I'm ready to do what I got to do. If I'm raising my hand if it needs to be done, etc., etc. He said, go let them know that that's what time you're on, so that you're active and that you're down for the woodpile. And it's like, okay, and my heart's beating. I'm definitely like not cut for this. I'm scared at this point. And so when the day comes, sure enough, he made me like a little bundle of syringes. There was like 4 or 5 push and pulls, whatever it was. It was really big, and I had to put it in my asshole with Vaseline. And then I was on this turbulent bus ride, shackled up all day, like bouncing up, and this fucking package of syringes is just like fucking me. The worst feeling ever. But the way that it works, when you catch the chain, they wake you up at like 3 in the morning. They give you a little sack lunch for breakfast. They go and they dress you into like... They give you these khaki-colored pants. They give you those blue canvas shoes and a white t-shirt. So everybody transferring is getting transported this way. So like there's all sorts of people from different floors. They put you in tanks. There's a lot of moving around from tank to tank. It's a horribly torturous day. Then they shackle you. They put you on a bus. And to go to Victorville, we had to stop by Terminal Island, which is like a little... federal, it's a low, and it's right on the water in San Pedro. Dropped some people off there. Then we went to Victorville, which is out in the middle of the Inland Empire, and we stopped at this airport, and all these buses from all over the country were dropping people off. A lot of people were in civilian clothes, street clothes. Maybe they got busted. They were getting extradited all over the country. And then I saw white airplanes, and that's Con Air. I took that when I went out to Wisconsin and when I went to Terre Haute, Indiana, and it's just these big white planes. There's no logos on them, and there's like U.S. Marshals standing there with an AR-15 right on the runway. So they bring all these buses, and buses meet up at this airport. It's like this private airport out in the Inland Empire, and you're just sitting there shackled, which is like torturous to be like this all day and shackled. And because of my points, because I was high, they put one of these lock boxes on. So it's like this little box that like you have to like hold in place like this, because I was going to a maximum security federal prison, and I was petrified. You know, like that whole bus ride, I was in my head about it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm way out of my element. I mean, the way that it was explained to me by Boots, he said, listen, little butterfly. He was calling me that. I was like, you don't make me bring up the butt fucking conga line. He's like, listen, little butterfly. MDCLA was like community college. Victorville is going to be like a real university. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm like, I think I do. He's like, that's very good, little butterfly. You know, and he'd like talk to me like I was some delicate little fucking bitch because I was so scared to go to prison, you know, like, and you can't show your emotions in prison, and I didn't know that, you know. I was green, and like, I'm extroverted, like, I'm the kind of guy, I'm like, oh my god, I'm having a herpes outbreak, and it's uncomfortable right now, like, it's going against my crotch, and it's like, it stings right now, like, I'll say that to somebody, I don't hold anything back, I don't care, like, I'm being degraded and demoralized from drug addiction after so long, like, honestly, I don't care anymore, I just don't, I'd rather just be who I am, and if you hate who I am, I'd rather you hate me than like me for just being a fake person. And I know that's not an original Shaky J quote, but that's how I feel about it. And at this point, I'm not going to pretend like I was some tough guy going into prison, because I definitely wasn't. It hardened me, that's for sure. But when I first went in there, I was petrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to get, you know, raped when I got there. I didn't know if I was going to get stabbed. I didn't know what was going to happen. So they bring us up to this. We get to Victorville. Now, it's located in just this desolate desert town, like kind of on the way to Las Vegas. And there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of trailers. It's just a really, really shitty part of California. And they bring, you know, so that prison has a female camp and 2 mediums. They say one's a medium high, one's a medium low. I don't know if that's true. The feds never say that. This is off inmate.com, which is like the proverbial term for just the rumor mill that inmates have. I mean, these grown men are worse than girls sometimes with the rumors, you know, and all this misinformation gets propagated, and it's just the nature of prison. You hear all sorts of stuff that's not true in prison, and people start quoting it like it's fact. So female camp, there's the 2 mediums, and then there's the USP. So I'm going to the USP. It has this horrible reputation. Even the FCIs have horrible reputations. Just the whole place is all bad. And I remember the self-awareness I felt that day when I was looking at that prison. It like really, like, the reality of it sank in. I mean, it's so ominous with the coiling razor wire, and it's such like a morose atmosphere. Like, there's like very scarce landscape with like, it's desertscape, you know, and it's just these big rectangular gray buildings. I'll post one for the thumbnail. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare factory, and you can feel the bad energy just right when you roll into any prison. You just feel all these tortured souls screaming simultaneously. You can literally feel it. It's palpable. So we drop some guys off at the FCI 2, and then we go up to the USP. And every time we get to a prison, they'll say, all right, they'll call the name, you know, whatever, blah, 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 Leone. And so I'm waiting for my name. I'm seeing everyone go to the USP, and they don't call me. And I'm like, I don't say anything. I definitely don't want to go to this place. I'm just like, I'm going to stay on the bus. Cool, I'm not going to the USP right now. Probably call me any second. They end up bringing me to the FCI 1, even though I was designated to a USP. And what they did is they put a management variable on me, very common when it's your first time in prison. I was like right on the line, so I had like the custody level points to go to a USP, but my counselor put on a management variable saying that she wanted me to stay at the medium. They do it pretty frequently for people, especially people that haven't been to prison, that are young. They don't want you to go get traumatized, this like hardcore USPs. I don't think I would have lasted 3 hours at this place. I probably would have gotten murdered. So they dress you in, squat and cough, all that stuff. They give you some linen. And the whole process, you have to be cleared by medical, by the therapist. They ask you, do you want to kill yourself, which is a stupid question. Of course you want to fucking kill yourself. It's your first day in prison. You're going to have to do years here. Of course you do. they ask these stupid questions. You know, obviously we say we don't want to kill ourselves. And then we go to our housing unit. And Victorville has, I want to say 8 units, but they're double. So there's like, you know, C lower, C upper, D lower, D upper, E lower. I'm not saying that in order, but you know, get the point. It's like A, B, C, D, E, and F. And each one has a lower and upper. The lowers, it's like 2-tiered, 2-man cells, probably like 140 inmates in the cell. So I go to my unit, and right when you walk into a unit when you're a new guy, like I'm wearing the little, they give you some sort of clothes for the prison, but it stands out. It's almost like a jumpsuit. It's not what you wore on the bus, it's something new. It's because you need to trade that to get your new linen at laundry exchange the next day. You can go up to it like, you know, I think it's open at like 10 o'clock or something, and you go to laundry exchange. I go in there with my linen, wearing this jumpsuit. I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm scared, and also because I'm new. Anybody that's new is going to get looked at, and this entire room seemed to be looking at me at the same time. And the white guys were not like super welcoming or anything. This old man with a shaved head and glasses, who I have a picture of, I'll send when I start doing that mailing list. His name was Ed, and he was the unit rep, and he came up to me and he was just like really scruffy. He was like, he's the guy that switched visitation room. He switched visits with my parents when I owed all that money. This guy Ed ended up being a good guy, but he comes up to me and he's like, hey, I'm Ed. What's your name? And I'm like, I'm Ryan. He's like, hey, Ryan, nice to meet you. Where are you from? I'm like, Santa Barbara. He's like, oh, great. What are you in here for? What's your charges? I'm like, I didn't say anything. No, that didn't really happen. But so he said, what are you in here for? And I said, I'm in here for a heroin conspiracy. He's like, okay. And how much time did you get? I'm like, 5 years. He's like, oh, it's pretty short for a conspiracy. See, all these guys were on meth conspiracies, and I explained earlier, 10 to 50 grams of meth is 5 to 40. 50 grams of meth and up is 10 to life. So it's a 10-year mandatory minimum for over 50 grams. Dude, 50 grams of meth is nothing. I'm not even a tweaker, and I've had that in my possession like literally hundreds of times. It's like over 2 ounces. It's nothing. And for heroin, it's 100 to 400, but heroin's a little more rare. It was then. Now they're really cracking down on it. But this was back in 2009. They weren't waging it wasn't full-blown war yet. So right off the bat, he's like, well, yeah, 5 years is a very short time. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, okay. And he's like, you have your paperwork, right? And it takes 2 weeks to follow. I said, yeah, I have 2 weeks. He says, you have 4 weeks to get it. So you get it in 4 weeks. If you don't get it, consequences are going to be serious. I'm like, okay, man. So he takes me into my cell, and he shows me what my cell is. He's like, this is your cellie, Tom. Okay, Tom is like 88 years old. He's like the oldest convict in history of Victor. He's like this decrepit old man. And he's like the most annoying person in the world. Like, I don't hate people, but I fucking hate this guy. I hate him. I seriously hope he's dead by now. I'm sure he is. This is, 10 years ago now. Piece of shit person. So Ed's like helping me make my bed, and I ask him, I'm like, hey man, and Tom's kind of just like looking at me, such a weirdo. And Ed's talking to him loud, like, hey Tom, this is the kid. This is Ryan. He's from Santa Barbara. He's doing 5 years on a conspiracy. Yeah, sketchy. I know. Very, very short sentence. And Tom's like, So I'm like, hey man, it's just between me and you. It's my first time in prison, and I'm kind of scared. He's like, oh man, don't believe the rumors. He's like, this place is chill. I'm like, okay, cool. And he takes a plexiglass knife, shank, first plexiglass shank I'd ever seen. It's like, it was beautiful looking. It looked like a nice knife, but plexiglass is not strong. When people stab people with it, they usually snap apart. But he pulls it out, has like a nice handle with like electrical tape, and he's like, you're gonna need a piece. I was like, I thought you said it was mellow. He's like, yeah, but everybody's strapped at this prison. Things do pop off. Do you know the politics? He's like, no eating behind the blacks, no smoking with the blacks, no black. Pretty much, he could have just said, don't do anything with black people, and I would have understood it. But he went on this like soliloquy for like 8 minutes, like, You know, don't have your family members order black people books. Don't make eye contact with black people past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't, you know, I'm just like, okay, dude, like, just super weird racist stuff. But it was primarily against blacks. He explained that there's a mandatory yard on Saturday. He said every Saturday all the whites have to go to yard at night. He said the reason being is that's when we clean up our trash. If, you know, if somebody's been fucking up, that's when we deal with it. I'm like, okay. So he gives me this knife. He teaches me how to draw to my drawstring. So there's like a little hole in the handle, and you put your drawstring, and you tie it in a way where it's accessible. So you can just like reach in your pants. And the reason you do it like where the drawstring is, you can make a little like sheath. You can have someone sew like a little sheath, and the piece can like rest right above that, like in the sheath. Like it holds it. Like it's still hanging, but when they are searching you, they can't pat it down because they're not going to touch your dick. So that's like, everyone always has this little like sheath, I guess is the best way to say it, that the piece goes into. So it's like my first 20 minutes in prison, I'm already strapped with a shank, you know, and he leaves. A couple other white guys come introduce themselves to me. They're all pretty much cold, you know. I'm asking like, hey, is there any heroin here? And, you know, they're all just like, oh my God, this guy's a straight informant. You know, I have no tact whatsoever. I'm like, hey, do you guys make alcohol? Do you guys really make alcohol here? I'd love to drink some alcohol. Like I had a fucking microphone in my shirt or something. That's how I was talking. That's how green I was. So these guys leave, and I'm with this guy, Tom. Now, Tom, like I said, is an epic piece of shit. Right? He's like in his late 80s. And he would like preface every sentence with "I may." He'd be like, I may have an illegitimate son in, say, North Wichita. I may owe the store guy $76 that I don't know how to pay. I had sex with a man in the back of a checkered cab, and it was non-consensual. I'm like, what? What do you mean you had sex with a man in the back of a cab and it wasn't consensual? He's like, I may have taken a pleasure cruise to Santa Cruz. I'm like, what? He would like say this really nonsensical stuff, but one thing that he did say is that he had sex with, he had raped a guy, and I was like, wait a second, is that rape? What do you mean? He's like, you know, he would talk like that. Seriously, I'm like not exaggerating, that's how he talked. I may have been arrested for a sex crime back in 1968. I'm like, 1968? Jesus Christ. It's like the oldest convict ever. And he was in there for rape, you know, and, you know, at that age, at like in your late 80s or however old this guy was, like, you should have prison libraries named after you, but they don't do that for people that rape dudes. And I'm like, how are you at this prison? Like, I thought sex offenders, he's like, well, I may have paid snaps. Snaps? No idea what that means. And he's like, well, you know, I may. And so he would always, everything he said would be like, I may snore when I sleep. I may, and I'm like, oh my God, there's no, like, I would rather get beat up than be in a cell with this guy. I mean, he's ridiculous. And his snoring was so bad. He'd be like, and, you know, I'm not kicking methadone anymore, but I mean, come on, guys, it's me. Call me old-fashioned, but I like to enjoy the occasional beat-off, even when someone's sleeping 3 feet from me in a bunk bed. So what? So what? And with his snoring, I just couldn't go to that happy place with images in my mind. I mean, unless your fantasy is getting butt fucked by Darth Vader, which, if that's you, that's cool, but it doesn't work for me. So my so-called sex life was a little disturbed by this piece of shit rapist guy that, it's like, what kind of prison allows a sex offender? And this is like a rough spot too. Like I saw some bad stuff happen to people like that when they slip through the cracks, and I'm going to get to that in later stories. But so I go to sleep, and, you know, Tom's like, I may wake you up in the morning if, you know, maybe, and like, you know, and he'd always trail off. into this babble that I didn't understand. I may. So he doesn't wake me up for breakfast like he told me he would, and so I missed breakfast my first day, and someone like shoots me a soup or something. They're like, "Oh man, you got to get on the schedule." A couple of like the younger white guys are talking to me now, and they're like, "Jesus, last night when you came in here and you're asking for alcohol, we thought you were a cop, man." And I'm like, "Yeah, do I look like a cop?" They're like, "Well, you have colored tattoos," whatever that meant, right? I know what that means now. I mean, I did look like a cop. I was like this chubby little Guido thug. I looked like a straight up informant. And I was asking people, I was like, "Hey, how often does marijuana come in here, guys?" Stuff like that. Like, just looking back, man. So, my very first day, so now we're in our very first day of prison. And they take me out to this softball field. Now, I talked about this in 23-1, and I've talked about it in other interviews, but just so the chronology stays intact, I want to explore it right now. They took me out to the softball field to meet all the other white guys. So I'd go up to all the white guys and be like, "Hey, what's up? I'm Ryan. I'm from Santa Barbara. Hey, what's up? I'm Tony. I'm from Vegas. I'm so-and-so from New York." And there's a very large amount of white guys at Victorville at that time. And this place had been dubbed Victimville. That's what everyone called it, Victimville. Boots would always say that. "You're going to Victimville, butterfly." He would say this to me all the time. And so it got in my head that I was going to be victimized in some fashion. I mean, I already was with Tom. Well, I may have victimized you. Who knows? And so I'm meeting all these guys out on the softball field, and there's this guy playing third base. And so I'm sitting on the bleachers, kind of just lost in conversation. Out of the corner of my eye, I see someone run up to the third baseman with a softball and hit him in the face with it. And as soon as he hits him, he falls down, and these guys start smashing him. Like a squad of people, 3 or 4 people jump on him. I mean, and they beat the brakes off him. And he's going, "Stop! Stop! Please, stop!" And it's so, there's so much urgency in his shrieks. It's just so, oh my God. It was gut-wrenching to watch. And they're hitting him with the softballs, and his face is imploding. Literally, teeth are coming out. You can just see blood cascading down him. It's just it's flowing. And finally, they stop beating him up. He gets up, he's wavering because his equilibrium's been off balanced, and he just falls right over. So we know that the other convicts knew that the COs would be coming and doing a knuckle check. And so there's 3 yards. I mean, it's the same prison, all the same inmates, and you have access to all 3 of the yards, but they're separated by fences, and you have to go through a turnstile, like you would at a fair or a concert or something. And that's how you get into each part of, each different part of the yard. And the reason being is if there's ever a lockdown or a riot, they separate races in these 3 sections. And they So I'm seeing all these convicts, all these white guys that I just met, take shanks out of their pants, out of their socks, out of their shoes. And it became evident to me that every single white guy at Victorville had a knife. They were passing the shanks through the fence, and there was people picking them up on the other side, Southsiders. So we're allies with Southsiders in the federal prisons back in those days. Woods and Southsiders run together. And I'm seeing everyone take out the knives and just put it under the fence. And it became absolutely clear to me that I was in way over my head. And we will get to this in the next video. It is 2:30 in the morning. I just wanted to get something out to you. Thank you, everybody that has looked out for me. And even if you can't do something financially, just share one of your favorite videos. Help me expand. I appreciate you. And have a good night. We'll do the live feed tomorrow. Thank you.